Well, the latest protests over women's safety come at a time when Bristol is discussing the future of strip clubs. Our Bristol Politics reporter Pete Simpson joins us. Pete, this is something that's been talked about for weeks, but everything has changed today, hasn't it? What exactly is being proposed?
Good morning, David. You're right, it has. In fact, every time these strip clubs apply for their licences to be renewed, there seems to be a discussion or a debate in the city about whether or not that should be allowed to go ahead. There's a crucial difference that's going on here. Bristol City Council have now actually started the process of introducing a new policy, which would mean that in future, in Bristol, strip clubs wouldn't be able to operate whatsoever.
Is Bristol leading the way, or have other places done this?
No, they're not. There are several other examples where this has happened. Warwick, Coventry, Exeter, Swansea's had a nil cap, they're called, for the best part of a decade. But Bristol would be the largest city by some distance to introduce such a policy. But, you know, it's very interesting, as I've been finding out, that this is an issue that goes way beyond the sort of very specifics of a licensing application, and indeed touches on many of those issues that you've already been discussing this morning.
When the nighttime economy came to a grinding halt last year, so too strip bars and lap dancing clubs. Like other trades, some business has moved online, but many workers in the sex industry have suffered because of COVID. There aren't a huge amount of sexual entertainment venues to give them their proper title in our region. This is one of only two in Bristol city centre. But if a new proposal from the City Council goes ahead, when bars, clubs, restaurants do reopen in future, places like this won't be amongst them. An online licensing committee, the sober opposite of a late-night strip joint. It was here this week that councillors voted to send the policy of a zero cap on Bristol strip clubs out to public consultation. The move has powerful backers. Bristol Mayor Marvin Rees made it an election pledge in 2016, while Police and Crime Commissioner Sue Mount-Stevens and Labour MP Thangham Debonair are also in favour. For campaigners, it would send a mighty signal to those who objectify women.
We know that there's a problem, a very big problem, with men's sexual violence towards women. What are the solutions? Let's look at the evidence and see what we can find out. What the evidence says is we need to change men's harmful ideas about women. We need to change the harmful, sexist social norms that say men are entitled to sexually objectify women and men are entitled to women's bodies. Unfortunately, those are exactly the issues that are being promoted in strip clubs.
The issue of sexual objectification is at the heart of this debate. Can it really be controlled or licensed? In town, I meet Chloe, a stripper who hasn't worked properly for the past year.
I don't have any qualms with nudity for a start. I came in one day, I tried it, I liked it, I stuck with it. I really enjoy dressing up, I really enjoy performing. People think that it's just like men of a certain age group and they're all sleazy. That's not true. In reality, everyone of every age group comes in from every kind of different profession, and we get quite a lot of women and couples too. If I'm honest, I do quite miss some of my customers. It's quite fun to just chat to a bunch of people, and you know, when you're at the club, you're not just dancing the whole time. You're sitting down, you're chatting with people, you're drinking. It's a very big social element to it.
It might not be a literal problem inside the club, which is well run and well regulated and has security, etc. But it's the idea that perhaps you're planting a seed or encouraging a certain way that men think about women that can lead somewhere very dark. Do you ever have any concerns that that's happening?
I feel like if that problem is there, we aren't the ones to blame for it. I feel like blaming a majority group of female workers for male violence against women, why target us for that? It's not like it never existed before strip clubs. It's not like getting rid of 2 strip clubs are going to alleviate that problem. It's a symptom, it's not a cause.
We need to make this really clear that this is about men and changing men's norms and men's attitudes. And the way we do that isn't by saying, here, as a city, we welcome men to come in and objectify women's bodies.
Men clearly have much skin in the game here, but canvassing strip club clientele isn't straightforward. On Radio Bristol this week, one caller explained why he used to visit them.
It's kind of an addiction thing. You sort of go to one, and then you like it, and you think, I'll go back, and then you sort of wake up the next morning, I remember going back there again, and then the lads say, come on, let's get to the club again, I was lonely. It's a mental health thing, because you want some company. All right, they're not wearing very much, that's the attraction, but a lot of it is company. I've been there, I've done it, I've gone to these places, and what am I doing? What am I doing in my life? Because I'm not going to take these women home,
Ultimately, stripping is a business. Its morality can be debated, but it exists because there's money to be made. At the end of a wretched year for Bristol's nightlife, for some the idea of choosing to put anyone out of work is baffling.
The hospitality industry all over the country, it's been devastated. It's been the hardest hit. Unemployment has doubled in Bristol. In the hospitality industry, it's much, much more. We would prefer that the council spent some of this money in hospitality businesses and help them survive.
For now, the public will have their say. Whatever the outcome, the debate on healthy attitudes towards women feels a long way from being stripped bare.
Well, thank you, Pete. That was a very thoughtful report, I thought. And if you want to give us your opinion, then our hashtag is Politics West. Do that. Let's start with Kerry again. Kerry, what do you say to dancers, entertainers like Chloe, we heard on that film, who enjoys her job and can't see any harm in it?
Well, I think she needs to reflect on the fact that it's not just about her. It's part of this wider problem about men not just objectifying women, but it being encouraged to objectify women. And I think there's something very odd about men paying to go and see women take their clothes off in the first place. And it was quite interesting, that clip from the man that had gone to the clubs. I thought it was quite sad listening to what he had to say. But she needs to reflect on the vast majority of women don't want to take their clothes off for men, and they don't want to be objectified by men as they go about their daily business. And there's a clear connection, I think, between the sort of clubs that we have here that I would like to think that we're not going to have in Bristol in future.
That's a point.
And wider societal attitudes towards women.
Kerry, that's a point actually that's made in this morning's Observer, who report on this, and they suggest that one of the spokespeople they speak to suggests that this feeds into attitudes which then lead to the harassment and abuse of women. Mark Harper, what do you think about that?
Well, on that issue, I simply don't know what the evidence is. So it would be useful to look at what the evidence is about whether these sorts of clubs do have that wider issue, because that would clearly raise, that would be something to take into account. I also have a concern, though, about these venues, which I understand are regulated and inspected. My worry, if you ban them, is that you force them underground and that they're then provided by people who are not obeying law, who are not regulated. And the danger then is that you perhaps put women at more risk, and you perhaps open up organised crime and people who engage in the trafficking of vulnerable women. So I do think you need to look at the evidence here, both for the issues that Kerry just mentioned, and I simply don't know I haven't looked at it in detail, I don't know what the evidence says about whether
Is it really an evidence thing though, Mark? Isn't it just sort of gut feeling?
Well, I do think in politics it's important to look at evidence. Kerry said that that's her view. I would like to look at some evidence, because if we're going to ban things and tell people they can't do things, I think for Parliament to say you can't do something, we just listened to one of the women that works in that industry, who, if we're going to say to her, you can't do this and you're not having that job, I do think you have to have some evidence for it. And I just say, I don't know what it is, but we ought to look at it and take it very seriously if there is evidence that suggests that's the case.
Okay. Now,